We've all been there, right? That knot that just tightens in your stomach when you know you have to have a tough conversation. Whether it's with your boss, your partner, a friend, you play it over and over in your head and it still goes off the rails. Well, today we're going to unpack a new playbook, a way to change that dynamic for good.
So, why is that? Why do these conversations that we go into with good intentions so often just blow up in our faces? We end up feeling angry, totally misunderstood, or honestly just worse than when we started. Turns out, most of us are making the exact same fundamental mistake right from the very first word. Okay, here's the heart of the problem. Most of us walk into these talks with what's called a message delivery stance. Our goal, whether we admit it or not, is to prove we're right and they're wrong. But the secret, the real shift, is moving to a learning stance. The goal completely changes. It's not about winning an argument anymore. It's about genuinely trying to understand their side so you can actually solve the problem together. But let's be real, that's easier said than done. When you're feeling attacked or misunderstood, how do you actually make that shift? How do you go from needing to be right to wanting to learn? Well, it all starts with this first technique. This is called the and stance, and trust me, it's a total game changer. It's about ditching the I'm right, you're wrong mindset. Instead, you operate from a new foundation. Two conflicting things can be true at the same time. My feelings are totally valid, and your feelings are totally valid. That one little word, and, flips a switch in your brain, moving you from absolute certainty to genuine curiosity. Let's see how this works in real life. So, Tony skips a hospital visit to watch a football game. Keiko's immediate thought? He is so selfish. The old approach would be to just attack him. But using the and stance, she says something different. She says, I felt really hurt that you missed the visit, and I also know you've had a brutal week at work. What's going on? That one tiny shift changed everything. It turned out Tony was completely burned out and just needed a break. Suddenly, it wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was just about two people with different, equally valid perspectives.
Okay, so you've got it. You're using the and stance, you're curious, you're open, you're feeling good. But even with that perfect mindset, there's another landmine waiting for you, a trap that can derail the entire conversation before it even gets going. And that brings us to technique number 2. This one is all about learning to separate two things that our brains almost always tangled together. You have to disentangle their intent from the impact their actions had on you. This is huge. We feel the impact of what someone does, the sting, the embarrassment, the anger, and we immediately invent a story about their bad intentions. But here's the thing. Our story about why they did it is just a guess. It's a story we tell ourselves, and it's almost always wrong. Just look at Leo and Lori. They're at a party, and Leo says, maybe lay off the ice cream. The impact? Lori feels completely humiliated. Her immediate assumption is his intent was to shame her. But instead of accusing him, she brilliantly separates the two. She states the impact, when you said that, I felt embarrassed. And then she asks about his intent. I'm curious what you were hoping to communicate with that comment. See what that does? It opens the door for him to explain that his clumsy but good intention was actually to support her diet. The whole thing shifts from an attack to a simple clarification. So, we've done the internal work on our mindset. Now it's time to shift the focus of the conversation itself. And that means that we have to banish one single, incredibly destructive word from our vocabulary. And that word is blame. The blame frame is a total dead end. All it does is look backward to find a villain, and it immediately puts everyone on the defensive. The alternative is to look at the contribution system. The question changes from whose fault is this to how did we both play a role in creating this situation? Take the executive whose assistant packed the wrong storyboards. The blame question is, how could you let this happen? But when they explored contribution, they discovered the exec's hostile mood made the assistant too scared to ask questions. Seeing how they both contributed allows them to actually fix the system so it doesn't happen again. All right, so we've got our mindset right. We're focused on contribution instead of blame. But how do you actually kick the whole thing off? How do you start the conversation without making the other person throw up a defensive wall from the very first sentence? You do it by starting from what's called the third story. I want you to imagine you're a neutral third party, like a mediator, just describing the facts of the situation. You don't lead with your feelings or your accusations. You simply describe the gap between your two perspectives with absolutely zero judgment. It creates this neutral, safe space for the other person to actually step into the conversation. Here's a perfect everyday example. The classic roommate fight over dirty dishes. Jason is furious.
Starting with his story, "You can't just let dishes sit this long," is like lighting a match. It's a guaranteed fight. But starting from the third story sounds like this. "It seems like we have different ideas about when the dishes should get done. Can we talk about it?" Who can possibly argue with that? It's just a neutral observation, and it invites collaboration instead of combat.
So you've done everything right up to this point. You've set the stage perfectly. But there is one final, absolutely crucial piece of the puzzle. And without this, all the other techniques can just fall apart. This is the ultimate key to not just speaking, but to actually being heard. Which brings us to our fifth and final technique. And this one might just be the most powerful of them all. You must acknowledge their feelings first. So many of us jump straight into problem solving. But here's a fundamental truth. People cannot hear your logic if they don't feel like their emotions have been heard. Before you try to explain your side, before you offer a single solution, you have to listen and show them that you understand how they feel. That's what makes them feel safe enough to listen to you.
This story about Greta and her mother just illustrates this so perfectly. Greta kept throwing facts and logic about diabetes at her mom, and all it did was start these huge fights. The breakthrough only happened when Greta finally stopped talking and just listened. She learned that the exercise plan made her mom feel like a sick old lady and was a painful, constant reminder that her husband was gone. Once Greta simply acknowledged that deep sadness and fear, once her mom felt truly heard, only then could they start to solve the problem together.
Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 5 techniques. And you can see how they build on each other to create this whole new way of handling our toughest conversations. Let's just do a quick run through to really lock this in. So here's your new playbook. Number 1, adopt the and stance. That's your switch from certainty to curiosity. 2, disentangle their intent from its impact on you. Stop assuming the worst. 3, ditch blame and map out how you both contributed. 4, start the conversation from that neutral third story. And number 5, maybe the most important, acknowledge their feelings first before you do anything else. Look, these tools are incredibly powerful, but they only work if you actually use them. So as you think about this new playbook, I'll just leave you with this one question. What's the one difficult conversation in your life that you're going to change starting today?